Hello everybody, my name is Julian and welcome to another dev diary for Lens Island. I've got an exciting episode today, going to be showing you a lot of progress with the caves and dungeon areas. Like you can see these cool little preview shots now on the screen, as well as a new enemy. So lots of exciting stuff to go through. A bit of a shorter video. I also want to get tons of feedback for all you guys about the caves and hear what you have to say. So I'm going to give a bit of a tour first, going to the caves. Just showing you what I've worked on. You may notice there's already a fair few visual differences, all the sorts of set dressing. I've made some little stalagmites and stalactites all throughout the cave. If you ever forget the difference between stalagmites and stalactites, stalactites hold on tight to the ceiling. That's how you remember that one as a little tip. But yeah, look, the cave's looking a lot more detailed, a lot more sort of different in a good way, because I've just started to make more of these assets to actually set dress and fill the cave with some more detail. That was one of the number one things that you guys mentioned before, that it just simply needed to look more like a cave, which I completely understood because it was still in the sort of the white boxing phase. For last video. It still is very much in the white boxing phase now. It's far from final, though it's starting to look a little bit more detailed. I've got in a new bridge here. We've got a nice pretty waterfall going through here. There are some new waterfall sounds. They're still not final. None of the sounds are final, but they're just trying to sort of indicate around about what we sort of want, just so we have something for now. But yeah, look, I think these stalagmites look really, really cool, sort of lit up. I really just wanted to put that lamp there just so I had an excuse to light them up from below, because there's some elements throughout the game that I really want to draw some attention to, and even just the look of the stalactites and the stalagmites, that sort of light peering up underneath, sort of casting those shadows, it just looks really cool. And there's certain elements all throughout this first level where I want to use this light to actually draw attention to very specific objects and scenes, mainly because the first cave level is going to be one of the most lit up cave levels of all of them. There will be less and less light as you go down into the caves, and there won't be nearly as much to actually work with as far as level design. So before I get into the new dungeon areas that you saw at the start of the video, I'll quickly show you this new enemy that we have. It looks pretty frightening, pretty creepy. It will actually be the boss that you battle at the end of this first dungeon, and I think it fits really, really well. So I'm going to give you a quick little preview of some of its animations and sounds. Leading on to the caves now, I'm going to explain a little bit about the story behind Lens Island, because that sort of ties into this whole area here, which is completely new. I think it looks really, really cool. I am really stoked of how the whole lighting and vibe of this area feels. Again, this is all like quite clearly a white box, so I've just got a bunch of cubes and stuff, and it's really, really rough around the edges, just trying to get an idea of how this area could look. So what this area is a sort of a tomb cross sort of place for prayer. A bit of the story behind the game is basically there was a civilization that once lived under the caves in these sort of areas, and they created all this beautiful stonework and everything, and they came down here to harvest all of the light stone, which is it's like the equivalent to diamonds in Minecraft. It's like the most sought after rare stone that's found only in the caves underneath the island. And they created all these really big sort of powerful beasts using the power of the stone, and they created these big chambers to house them and to pray to them and sort of worship them. So those beasts are essentially the bosses at the end of each one of the dungeons. So this is the first entrance to the dungeon. All the dungeons will have entrances like this. The reason why the sunlight is actually coming through is because where I'm standing actually perfectly lines up with that little island off the sort of the mainland on the player's island. And I've been forever trying to figure out what to do with this little island, because I just wasn't really sure, and it was just funny that the cave basically was situated perfectly where if you walk down the hallway of the cave and then go into this dungeon, it actually sits right underneath that island. So what I'm going to do is basically extend this whole room upwards and make sort of like a Stonehenge sort of monument on the actual above ground of the island, and you'll be able to see some of the cracks in the floor where the light would be shining through down to here, to sort of tie the above ground and the below ground together and make them a bit more coherent. and then leading on to the actual dungeon. So now this is where all the fighting will take place. I've got a lot of different sort of concept art and ideas and things I've been trying to follow for these dungeons. It's very, very rough sort of white boxing at the moment. Although the caves, I'm really liking the look of them, and I think their design is somewhat final as far as aesthetics. I obviously just need to add a lot more details to the caves. This dungeon area is something where I'm really trying to figure out what sort of aesthetic and general look and feel that I want, and something that also works really well for gameplay. One of my big, I guess, inspirations was actually Mines of Moria from Lord of the Rings, if any of you guys have seen that. I just love the tall, looming stone objects, like where you can look off the edge and it just feels like it's this huge drop down to your death. And I think it gives a really unique feeling, this sort of sense of vertigo and this sense of, I guess, sort of like entrapment, like you have to stay on these sorts of stone spires and walkways, and it's very dangerous and you can't sort of veer off them, otherwise you will fall. And it's something where I really like that feeling. I'm just trying to work out best how it will play out, and it's something where I can control. You may even notice I've got little sort of hand railings, and that's something where as simple as a little hand railing on a walkway can be a really, really big sort of padding in the game and make it a lot easier for combat. So it basically negates the chance of you rolling off or accidentally walking off the edge of the cliff. You have some sort of walkway that stops you, and it makes it a lot easier. So I can play around with a lot of elements like that to make levels easier and harder. I've just fallen off the edge, but yeah, so I'm still really trying to hone that in and figure out what's perfect for the game. So yeah, this gives you a bit of idea of the whole sort of footprint of this cave system. Yeah, if you're wondering where I got those light beams from, they're just 2D sprites that I've just scaled. They just have a little fade texture on them. I just sort of faked it. I'll probably will end up doing a technique exactly like this for the final game anyway. And yeah, I've just done pretty easy techniques to make this area look good, even just to emulate sort of bounce light like you would from the water, how it's casting this blue light. I just put a second little blue light in here and then just turn off the shadows, and that sort of emulates that whole sort of bounce lighting from the blue water. And then I have an emissive texture on this that glows, and then I also have a little light in front of it as well. So you can actually achieve some pretty realistic and interesting lighting techniques just by being a bit creative, and just placing lights, different colored lights in different areas, and using textures like this and all sorts of stuff. All of the lights actually casting down into the area are just spotlights. So here's a little spotlight here, and I can actually, sort of rotate that around and change where it's hitting. And I've used them. You can see they've got quite intensity. Their intensity is very far up, just to give that feeling that the light is almost blinding, that it's so bright. Because you are sort of down in these deep dark caves, the light would be quite bright, because your eyes are used to seeing in the dark area. But yeah, look, that's a bit of a sort of a quick little overview here. You can see the dungeons here. Like you can see, it's still very, very early days for the dungeons. I'm more or less just trying to just figure out a whole bunch of ideas and just see what I can do. Like always, I'd really appreciate all of your feedback if you have ideas specifically for the dungeons. That's probably the main area that I'm going to be spending a lot of work on soon, as we will also be getting the enemies in the dungeons within the next few weeks and starting to trial the actual combat in here and how it all flows as well. So look, there's lots to do, and I'd really appreciate all of your feedback if you have any ideas relating to this stuff. I also, if you're not in the Discord group or anything, you can join the Discord server. I'll have the link in the description, and you can chat to me there and give all sorts of ideas there as well. And then before I go, if you haven't wishlisted the game already on Steam, it's now available on Steam, so you can go right to the top of the description and wishlist Lens Island on Steam. So look, I hope you enjoyed today's video. As always, I hope you have an amazing day, everybody. It's been Julian or Flow Graphics. I'll see you in the next one.